Hey, it's Logan Brooks, and this happened 3 years ago while I was driving home from my late shift at a warehouse outside Springfield, Missouri. It was almost 1:30 in the morning. The roads were empty except for the occasional truck passing in the opposite direction. Rain had started falling about 20 minutes earlier, turning the two-lane highway into a glossy black mirror. About 10 miles outside town, I noticed someone standing on the shoulder. At first, I assumed it was a stranded driver. As I got closer, I saw it was a young woman wearing a soaked gray hoodie. She was waving both arms desperately. My first instinct was to keep driving, but then she stumbled into the edge of the road. I hit the brakes. She ran to my passenger window before I could even unlock the doors. "Please," she cried. "My boyfriend wrecked his truck down the road. He's bleeding. My phone died." She looked terrified. Her hands were shaking. She even had what looked like dried blood on one sleeve. Everything about her seemed real. I unlocked the passenger door. The moment she climbed in, she kept looking behind us instead of ahead. That should have been my first warning. "How far?" I asked. "Just another mile." We drove in silence. 1 mile became 2, then 3. Every time I asked where the truck was, she'd say, "Just a little farther." Finally, she pointed toward a narrow gravel road, disappearing in a thick woods. "It's down there." The road wasn't marked. No houses, no lights, no tire tracks except old ones washed over by rain. I slowed the truck. Something felt wrong. "I don't see anything. You have to go farther." Her voice had changed. It sounded flat, almost impatient. As I reached for the gear shift, my headlights briefly reflected something in the trees. A man, standing perfectly still. Then another. Then another. 3 figures, all watching us. None of them moved. My stomach dropped. "What is this?" I asked. The woman didn't answer. Instead, she quietly locked my passenger door. Click, then smiled. It wasn't nervous anymore. It was confident. "You shouldn't have stopped." Every hair on my arm stood up. I threw the truck into reverse. The engine screamed as tires spun through wet gravel. The woman suddenly grabbed my steering wheel. "You need to stay." I shoved her away with my elbow. She slammed into the passenger door, screaming curses I couldn't even understand. Outside, the 3 men started running. Not walking, running straight toward my truck. I floored the gas backward. The truck bounced over potholes while my mirrors showed them getting closer. One of them was carrying something long. At first, I thought it was a shovel. Then lightning flashed. It was a baseball bat. I hit the highway so hard the rear tires fishtailed before finally grabbing pavement. The woman tried opening my door while we were moving. Luckily, it was still locked. She began punching the dashboard. "Turn around." I reached across, unlocked her door, and shoved it open. The force nearly pulled her out. She jumped instead, rolling across the wet shoulder. I didn't stop. I drove nearly 15 miles before pulling into the parking lot of an all-night gas station. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. The clerk immediately noticed something was wrong and called 911. At first, I thought it was over. I couldn't have been more wrong. 2 deputies arrived within minutes. I told them everything. The woman, the gravel road, the men in the woods. The deputies exchanged a look I still remember. One of them asked quietly, "Can you show us exactly where?" We drove back together. When we reached the highway, I immediately recognized the spot. But the gravel road was gone. Not blocked. Gone. There was nothing except thick trees stretching alongside the highway. I insisted that wasn't possible. I'd driven down it only 20 minutes earlier. The deputies searched on foot for nearly an hour. Nothing. No road. No footprints. No tire marks. No woman. No men. Eventually, they suggested stress had affected my memory. I knew what I'd seen. For weeks afterward, I couldn't sleep. Every night, I replayed that smile. "You shouldn't have stopped." About 2 months later, I received an unexpected phone call. It was one of the deputies. His voice sounded uneasy. He asked if I'd be willing to come to the station. When I arrived, he placed an old newspaper on the table. The headline froze me. Local couples still missing after highway disappearance. The article was almost 14 years old. According to investigators, a husband and wife had stopped after seeing a young woman asking for help near that same highway. Their abandoned SUV was later found unlocked. No sign of the couple. No suspects. No evidence. Then he slid over another file. 5 years after that, a college student disappeared after reporting a woman waving him down during heavy rain. His truck was discovered parked on the shoulder with the driver's door open. He was never found. The deputy leaned closer. "I didn't believe your story that night." He paused. "But yours isn't the first." He explained several reports over the years described almost the exact same woman. Gray hoodie, panicked voice, boyfriend hurt, dead phone, always during rain, always after midnight, always on that stretch of highway. None of the cases had enough evidence to stay open. Officially, nothing connected them. Unofficially, the older deputies refused to patrol that road alone. I quit working nights after that. 8 months later, I was driving with my younger brother after visiting family. Without realizing it, we'd taken that same highway. Rain began falling. My brother suddenly pointed ahead. Someone standing by the road. I felt my heartbeat explode. There she was. Gray hoodie, both arms waving. Exactly the same. She hadn't aged a day. I slammed the accelerator. My brother kept asking why I wasn't stopping. I couldn't answer. In the mirror, I watched her lower her arms. Then, she smiled. The exact same smile. Standing completely still as our taillights disappeared into the darkness. To this day, I don't know who she was or what those men wanted. But whenever someone says they'd never ignore a stranger begging for help on an empty road, I hope they never have to find out how convincing evil can look. I worked late at a warehouse about 30 minutes outside town. The roads were empty and snow had started falling just after sunset. Around 10:45 p.m., I was driving home along a two-lane highway, surrounded by miles of forest. That's when I saw her. A young woman stood on the shoulder of the road waving both arms. She looked terrified. She wore a gray hoodie, jeans, and sneakers that were completely soaked with snow. She couldn't have been older than 25. As I slowed down, she ran toward my truck. "Please, please help me," she cried. "My boyfriend left me out here. My phone's dead." She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. Everything about her looked real. I unlocked the passenger door. The moment she climbed inside, she kept looking through the rear window instead of at me. I asked if she was hurt. She whispered, "Just drive." I figured she was scared of her boyfriend, so I pulled back onto the highway. For the next 5 minutes, she barely spoke. Then she suddenly asked, "Has anyone been behind us?" I checked the mirror. No. She kept staring into the darkness outside. Then she quietly said something that made me uneasy. "They're probably hiding." I asked who she meant. She didn't answer. Instead, she pointed ahead. "Turn onto that dirt road." I looked where she pointed. The road wasn't marked. Just 2 tire tracks disappearing into the trees. I laughed nervously. "I'm taking you into town. We can call the sheriff." Her expression changed instantly. No, it wasn't fear anymore. It sounded angry. "You have to turn." I told her I wasn't driving into the woods at night. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she smiled. It wasn't a relieved smile. It looked rehearsed, like someone pretending to act normal. She leaned back in her seat and folded her hands. "Okay." The silence after that felt worse than anything she'd said. A few minutes later, I noticed headlights appear behind us. One pickup truck, then another. Both were driving without their high beams. They stayed far enough back that I couldn't see the license plates. The woman looked over her shoulder and smiled again. "They found us." I felt my stomach tighten. "What do you mean they found us?" She ignored me. Instead, she rolled down her window halfway, despite the freezing air. I reached over and rolled it back up. She immediately rolled it down again. Then she stuck her hand outside and waved. Not for help, like she was signaling someone. That's when I realized those trucks weren't following her. They were following me. I slammed the window shut and locked every door. She laughed, not loudly, just enough to make every hair on my arm stand up. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. Before the call connected, she snatched the phone from my hand and threw it into the back seat. "You don't need them." I hit the brakes hard. The truck skidded across the icy road. She lunged for the steering wheel. We both fought for control. I shoved her away just enough to keep us from going into the ditch. The two pickups behind us suddenly accelerated. That's when I understood. She had never needed help. She had been waiting for someone exactly like me. I floored the gas pedal. The truck fishtailed on the ice, but somehow I kept it straight. The woman was screaming now, not because she was scared, because she was furious. She punched me across the face and grabbed for the keys. I shoved her against the passenger door while trying to steer. Behind us, the pickups were getting closer. Their headlights filled my mirrors. One pulled into the opposite lane. The other stayed directly behind me. They were trying to box me in. I knew if they stopped my truck, I wasn't getting home. About 2 miles ahead, I saw a green highway sign. There was a small gas station, open 24 hours. I'd stopped there plenty of times after work. It wasn't far. I just had to reach it. The woman noticed the sign too. "No!" She screamed so loudly my ears rang. Then she unlocked her door. At nearly 60 miles an hour, cold air exploded into the cab. She leaned halfway outside while waving both arms toward the trucks. One of the pickups suddenly sped forward. I swerved onto the station entrance, so fast my tires left the pavement. The truck slammed to a stop beside the fuel pumps. I jumped out before the engine even died. The clerk inside heard me yelling and immediately locked the front doors after pulling me inside. The woman never chased me. She calmly climbed out of my truck. One pickup stopped beside her. The other waited near the road. None of them tried to enter the gas station. They simply stood there, watching. The clerk had already called 911. Within minutes, sheriff's deputies arrived from both directions. By then, the trucks were gone. So was the woman. Officers searched the woods for hours. Nothing. No footprints. No abandoned vehicle. No sign anyone had been there. I expected them to think I made everything up. Instead, one deputy became strangely quiet after hearing my story. He asked me exactly where I'd first picked her up. The next day he called me. He told me they had found fresh tire tracks near that stretch of highway. Hidden behind a line of trees was a narrow logging road leading to an abandoned hunting cabin. Inside were zip ties, duct tape, empty food containers, blankets, and several disposable phones. Everything had been removed before police arrived except what someone couldn't carry. There was enough evidence to convince investigators that people had been using the cabin, but no one was ever identified. The deputy admitted something that still keeps me awake. Over the previous 5 years, several drivers had disappeared within 40 miles of that same highway. Most had last been seen driving alone at night. None of the cases had ever been connected. Officially, nothing linked them. Unofficially, he believed I had interrupted an organized trap. Someone pretending to need help. Someone counting on decent people to stop. I sold that truck a month later. I also bought a dash camera for every vehicle I've owned since. Now, whenever I see someone stranded on a dark road, I don't stop. I call 911 and keep driving. Some people might judge that decision. They're free to. They weren't sitting beside a smiling stranger who waved her partners toward them in the middle of nowhere. And they never saw those headlights closing in through the snow.